Mirror image. I always thought identity theft looked like a drained bank account or a fraudulent credit card charge. Something cold, clinical, impersonal. I never imagined it could wear my face, speak in my voice, and seduce people using pieces of my soul. But that's exactly what happened. It started with a screenshot from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. My ex-boyfriend, James. We didn't part on great terms, so when his name popped up on my phone at 2:08 a.m., I was more annoyed than curious. The message was short, just an image and a line of text. Cute. Thought you said you weren't dating again? I sat up in bed, rubbing sleep from my eyes as I tapped the attachment. It opened to reveal a Hinge profile. A woman, my face, my hair, my smile. The same photo I'd once used as my LinkedIn headshot, only slightly warmer in tone, like it had been run through a dating app filter. Name, Hannah, 28. Occupation, UX designer at Aster Creative. Location, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Bio, true crime junkie, rooftop sunsets, fluent in sarcasm, looking for something that feels like home. I felt my heart drop. It wasn't just a stolen photo. This person had used my actual information. My job, my neighborhood, my hobbies, even my voice. That line about sarcasm was something I'd written on Twitter over a year ago. And that closing phrase? Something I once said to James late one night when we still trusted each other. The kicker? I'd never made a Hinge profile, not even during the pandemic, when everyone else was desperate for digital connection. I always found dating apps invasive, performative. I didn't like the idea of strangers swiping through me like a menu. Now, someone else had built a version of me that was exactly that. My first thought was that it had to be a prank, maybe a friend being weird, or someone using my public photos as a joke. But then came the emails. The first one arrived at 7:14 a.m. the next morning. Hey Hannah, really enjoyed chatting last night. You've got a great sense of humor. Let's get that drink this week. I stared at the sender. Some guy named Ben C. I didn't recognize the name, the face in his Gmail avatar, or the conversation he was referencing. An hour later, another email, then 2 more. By noon, I had 7 messages in my inbox, all from different men, all referencing chats we supposedly had, dates we were planning, things I never said but sounded eerily close to something I could say. One even attached a playlist. Per your request, late night rooftop vibes. You've got amazing taste. I clicked the link. The first song was a track I'd posted once on Instagram stories. That's when the fear set in. This wasn't just a catfish using my photos. Someone had built a composite version of me, one crafted from fragments scraped across years of digital life. Tweets, captions, work bios, Spotify shares, even the bio on my design portfolio. It was personal, too personal. And it didn't feel random. I reported the emails as spam and took screenshots. I tried searching for the profile again, but it had been deleted. Scrubbed maybe, or just hidden. But that didn't matter, because by the next morning, my number had been posted on an obscure Reddit thread about authentic NYC singles. How did I know? Because the texts started coming in. At first they were flirtatious, then demanding, then threatening. Why'd you ghost me after that great call? Beach, don't waste my time. Say hi, Hannah. I know it's you. My stomach dropped. They weren't just talking to a fake version of me. They were convinced I was the fake. And someone was pushing them in that direction. Someone who knew enough about me to make it believable. Block 2. Every breath you take. The digital invasion became physical within 48 hours. That Friday, I came home from work and noticed the smallest thing out of place. My mailbox was slightly ajar. I lived in a secure building. Keypad entry, 24-hour doorman, surveillance on every floor. I'd never once seen my mailbox open without a key. It didn't even register at first. just a flicker of discomfort. But when I reached inside, there was no mail, just a folded piece of printer paper. 3 words typed in bold Arial. Tell them you're real. No envelope, no signature, no postage. I turned slowly, half expecting to see someone watching from the hall, but it was empty, silent. I shut the mailbox and locked it, my heart pounding in my ears. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't someone halfway across the country using me for catfishing clout. This person was close. They knew where I lived. They had access, or had found a way around access. And they weren't just impersonating me. They were challenging me to fight for ownership of my own identity. I spent that weekend offline, sleeping with the lights on, obsessively checking every camera, notification, and security feature I could activate. I changed every password. I enabled 2-factor authentication across platforms I hadn't logged into in years. I deleted my old tweets, archived my Instagram, and filed reports with Hinge, Reddit, Gmail, and even Spotify. But none of that addressed the core issue. Who was this person? And what did they want? By Monday, the emails had stopped, but the texts didn't. One man sent a selfie of himself standing on Bedford Avenue, my block. Another said, "I just saw you at Spoonbill Books, looking even hotter IRL." I hadn't left my apartment in 2 days. Then a man named Jared called me. He didn't sound angry. He sounded confused, hurt even. "I just don't understand." We FaceTimed, Hannah. Like 2 nights ago. You were wearing that Bowie shirt. You showed me your balcony view. I froze. That shirt, my favorite vintage tee, was visible in a photo ID posted a year ago. The balcony shot? It was the backdrop of a reel I shared last fall. You even held up your coffee mug and said, "Guess the quote." That was a thing I did with friends. It wasn't online anywhere. Unless someone had screen recorded me on a Zoom meeting, hacked into a call, or, and this was worse, they had reconstructed me using AI, voice mimicking, maybe even deepfake tech. The tools were out there now. And to someone determined enough, persistent enough, this wouldn't be that far-fetched. When I asked Jared where he got my number, he said, "You gave it to me. On the app." He paused. "Unless that wasn't you?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because even if I told him the truth, the real truth, it sounded insane, like a paranoid thriller. But I wasn't paranoid. Someone was running a real-time impersonation campaign, and they were escalating. I filed a police report that evening. The officer behind the desk looked sympathetic, but overwhelmed. This kind of thing's been increasing. Deepfake blackmail, catfishing, AI cloning. Social media's a goldmine for stalkers. I showed him the emails, the texts, the letter. He took notes. Asked if I had any idea who might be doing this. I didn't. At least not yet. But in the back of my mind, a name had started to float. A colleague from 2 jobs ago. One who'd been fired for crossing boundaries. A tech-savvy ex-client. A girl I barely knew from a co-working space who once made an odd comment about my perfect digital footprint. There were too many suspects, too many breadcrumbs, and not a single damn trail. That night, I received a final message. No words, just a GIF. My face blinking, smiling, mouthing, "hello." But it wasn't a video I'd ever made. It was fabricated. Because the background, the outfit, the lighting, it was a copy of my bedroom, down to the exact fairy lights strung across the wall. Only, I had taken those down 3 months ago. This version of me was stuck in the past. And someone out there wanted to keep her alive. Block 3. The ghost in the machine. The next day, I met with a cybersecurity expert. Ethan was recommended by a friend who worked in tech. Tall, wearing glasses, and looking like he stepped out of a startup ad. the kind of person who talked in terms of infrastructure and access points and zero-trust networks. We sat at a local cafe, and I showed him everything: the emails, the texts, the photos, and the police report. His eyes flicked through each file, brows furrowed, lips tight. After a few minutes of silent examination, he looked up. "This isn't just digital catfishing. This is someone who's monitoring your every move. They're not just using your photos. They're pulling your life, in real time." My chest tightened. "What do you mean? How could they be monitoring me?" "You're active online, right? Social media, emails, shopping habits. All your digital activity is a map for them. If they've been tracking your online behavior, they could predict where you're going, when you're home, even your routines." I nodded slowly. I had always been cautious. At least I thought I was. I used encryption, VPNs. I double-checked my security settings. But with every notification, every message, it became painfully clear. I had underestimated the length someone could go to manipulate another person's life. "What can I do?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. Ethan sighed. "We need to go on the offense. First, we'll track the IPs behind these messages. See if we can catch the source. We can also look into your digital footprint, see where you're exposed. But it's going to take time, and it's going to get messier before it gets better." I agreed. For the next week, Ethan and I worked together. He helped me secure my devices, scrub my online presence even more thoroughly, and set up alerts for anything suspicious. But the deeper we dug, the more unsettling the picture became. It wasn't just one person. There were multiple accounts that had used my identity, not just for catfishing, but for something more sinister, creating fake profiles to reach out to people I knew. Messages were sent from me to colleagues, old friends, even my boss, implying that I was unstable, untrustworthy, that I had made false claims about work projects or friendships. I felt my world spinning. Each message that I found online twisted the truth in ways that I couldn't unsee. False stories were spreading about me. At first, they were just whispers, but by the end of the week, it felt like a full-fledged campaign against me. One of the fake profiles had contacted my boss with a fabricated story that I had falsified financial reports, details I'd never even known about. I was paralyzed. Who was doing this? Why? It became clear. Someone who had access to both my private life and my professional world was deliberately using every inch of me to ruin my reputation. They weren't just impersonating me. They were rewriting my story. The subject line read, "You're still too close." Inside was a file, no text, just a video. I hesitated before opening it. My finger hovered over the play button, the fear gnawing at my gut. But then I thought of my friends, my job, my sense of safety. I couldn't let this go on. I clicked it. The video was grainy, shaky, but recognizable. It was me, sitting in my apartment, reading on the couch, drinking tea. But this footage wasn't from my social media. It wasn't even from my security cameras. It was filmed through my window. My stomach lurched as I recognized the view, the angle, the reflection of my face in the glass. Whoever filmed it had been outside, watching me. I immediately saved the file to my laptop. Ethan had warned me to keep every piece of evidence, no matter how small. But there was something else buried within the footage. A sound. Soft at first, but then louder as the video played. A voice. A whisper. "You should have kept the secret, Hannah." The hairs on my neck stood up. My breath caught. There it was. The one thing I'd been missing. A personal connection. A voice. Whoever was doing this wasn't hiding anymore. They wanted me to hear them. They wanted me to know that this wasn't just about me. This was about them. I froze, heart pounding, as the screen went black. I immediately texted Ethan, asking for help. But when I looked at my phone, my hands shaking, my message wasn't there. It was gone. I checked again, trying to ignore the panic bubbling up in my chest. Nothing. The texts I had sent to Ethan, the email alerts, even the calendar event for our meeting, they had all vanished. Suddenly I was alone again. Everything I had started to build to reclaim my life, my identity, was slipping through my fingers. Who had access to my devices? Who had the power to delete everything I'd been working on? Block 4. The web expands. I began mapping every piece of information I had. A wall in my apartment soon turned into a war room. Photos, post-it notes, printed messages, timestamps. I drew red lines between clues like a detective in a noir film. Because that more or less what I had become. The lead investigator in a crime against my own existence. Whoever was doing this wasn't just tech-savvy. They were obsessed. And detail-oriented to a terrifying degree. They mimicked not only my digital life, but my behavioral patterns. My responses to texts, my voice tone when I was excited, even my humor. Sarcasm laced with warmth, a signature only people close to me would recognize. That's when I realized this person wasn't a stranger. They had known me, or they'd studied me so deeply that they may as well have been inside my skin. I started backtracking through my interactions, going back years, old jobs, ex-roommates, toxic exes. A girl from a college internship who once asked way too many personal questions. My list was long, but most of the names had one thing in common. They were connected to Cassandra Ray. We hadn't spoken in over 2 years. Cassie had been my college roommate, brilliant, magnetic, a little unstable. She was the kind of person who could drink 2 bottles of wine, spill your secrets to a stranger, and still charm her way out of trouble. We had fallen out after a disastrous vacation where she maxed out my credit card and blamed me for the charges. I hadn't thought about her since, but she had the tech skills, she had the grudge, and she had access. I searched her name. Her LinkedIn was inactive, her Instagram gone. But a Reddit account under the handle rcasrays had been very active. A trail of posts across tech forums about AI voice cloning, facial morphing, digital footprint mapping. I scrolled until I hit a post from 6 months ago. It's easy. People share everything online. It's not theft if they put it out there. And then, chillingly, you can recreate someone's life if you know their digital DNA. My digital DNA. I had shared everything. Years of selfies, captions, videos, live streams. It was enough to build an avatar, a ghost, a version of me that wasn't me, but looked like me, spoke like me, laughed like me. I was being replaced by my own data. I returned to the police with this information. The detective assigned to my case, Detective Malone, listened carefully. She was older, pragmatic, and skeptical, but not dismissive. You were saying someone else built a replica of you, online and possibly offline, using publicly available material? Yes, I said. And they're using it to live a version of my life. Date men, lie, defraud, possibly worse. She took notes. And you believe it's someone named Cassandra Ray? She has the motive, the skills, and she vanished off the grid just before this all started. Malone leaned back. All right, let's assume you're right. The next step is proving it. We'll need digital forensics, IP tracing, subpoenas. How long will that take? She didn't answer right away. Longer than you want it to. I nodded, because I knew time wasn't on my side. That night, I received another message. Not from Cassandra, but from Jared, the man who'd been catfished by my double. Hey, I just found a weird account. It's you, but also not you. Check this out. He sent a link. It was a profile on a niche dating platform. The bio was mine, word for word from my real Hinge account, but the pictures were slightly off. My smile was wider, my eyes darker. There was something artificial in the lighting, like she had been airbrushed by an algorithm. And the name? Hannah Reborn. Underneath, a new tagline. Reinvented, Upgraded. Real. I stared at the screen for a full minute, and then I knew this wasn't just about erasing me. It was about replacing me with something better, more perfect, more obedient. But she'd made a mistake, because the real me wasn't going to disappear quietly. Block 5. A face without a soul. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just identity theft. It was identity engineering, the construction of a synthetic persona, a Frankenstein version of me, tailored for digital consumption. And the worst part? People preferred her. The messages that once trickled in had become a flood. Dozens of men, real people, reaching out, desperate for connection with a version of me I never authorized, never created. They called her funny, magnetic, vulnerable. Words I'd always craved hearing, but in this context, felt like knives in my back. And behind every interaction was her, Hannah reborn. An algorithm's dream girl. My nightmare. I took the profile screenshots to Ethan. His face turned grim the moment he saw the interface. She's using deep synthesis tech. This is next level. Whoever's behind this isn't just playing games anymore. They've built a persona farm. They're not only stealing identities, they're monetizing them. He tapped away on his laptop, pulling code, tracing domains. I stood behind him, watching the lines scroll like the Matrix, my heart pounding louder than the fan on his machine. There, he said finally. Your double is connected to a cluster of AI-generated personas. Each one mirrors a real person. Same city, similar names. They're being tested, trained, possibly sold. Sold? I asked. To bots, to influence campaigns, to blackmail rings. Some of these accounts are probably running on autopilot, using synthetic interactions harvested from real-life patterns. I sank into the chair. A chill ran down my spine. My face, my voice, my digital self was being auctioned off like data meat to the highest bidder. How do we stop it? Ethan hesitated. There's a physical server behind this, a central node. It's bouncing between proxies, but it originates somewhere. His fingers flew across the keyboard. And if we find it, we can wipe her. No, but we can expose her. We launched a trap. Ethan built a mirror of Hannah reborn, using my real voice, my real videos, and injected it into the same dating ecosystems. We baited the fake Hannah into conversation through several dummy profiles we controlled. For 3 days, nothing. Then, on day 4, she bit. She messaged one of our fakes. Hey you, loved your bio. You seem real. The irony stung, but Ethan had what he needed. An IP tether. Weak, bouncing, but traceable. Enough to link the account activity to a physical device. Location, somewhere in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. The same neighborhood Cassie used to rent her studio in. I returned to the police. Malone listened, impressed. That's a solid lead, but it's circumstantial. We'll need more to secure a warrant. I understood, which meant I needed to find Cassie, in person. I went old school. I printed flyers. Yes, actual paper flyers. Missing identity. Have you seen this face? My photo. Used without consent. If you know this person, please contact. I left the bottom line blank. Just a burner email. And I pasted them in coffee shops, co-working spaces, apartment lobbies in Greenpoint. Desperate? Maybe. But it worked. 2 days later, I got a response. I know her. She works out of a rental studio on Java Street. 3rd floor, no signage. Goes by Nessa now. Quiet, but weirdly intense. Always mumbling about cleansing the feed. My hands shook as I read the message. Cassie hadn't just rebranded me. She'd rebranded herself. I went there the next day. Alone. Bad idea? Definitely. But I needed to see it. The building was old, red-bricked, hidden between a bakery and a tattoo parlor. Inside, a narrow staircase, barely lit. On the third floor, a door. No name, just a small sticker. Noise-free zone. I knocked. No answer. I tried again. Still silence. So I waited. 30 minutes. Just as I was about to leave, I heard footsteps. Keys. A woman humming. She turned the corner, holding groceries. My breath caught. It was her. But it wasn't. Gone was the bleach blonde. Her hair was dark now. Chin length. Glasses. No makeup. But the eyes? Unmistakable. She froze. I smiled. Hi, Cassie. She dropped her keys. Literally dropped them. Rachel? She whispered. I didn't let her speak again. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and asked the only question that mattered. Why did you steal me? Block 6. The confrontation. Cassie stood frozen in the hallway, grocery bags dangling from her hands, lips slightly parted. The shock in her eyes morphed into something more complicated, an emotion I hadn't seen in her since college. Not guilt, not fear, not even remorse. It was satisfaction. I was wondering when you'd come, she said quietly. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect any of it, honestly. I thought she'd deny, run, threaten me. Instead, she opened the door to her studio and walked in like I was expected. Come on, she called. I know what you're here for. I hesitated for 2 beats before following her inside. The air was cool, filtered by a silent AC unit in the corner. A diffuser spread lavender and sage through the room, but it didn't mask the tech. And there was a lot of tech. 3 monitors blinked against one wall. A tower CPU with liquid cooling. Soundproofing foam on the windows. In the center sat a minimalist desk with a single chair. And above it, photos. Hundreds of them. Stuck to the wall with washi tape, arranged like an altar. Me. Every version. From Instagram. From LinkedIn. From the wedding of a mutual friend where I wore a burgundy dress. Even from my old Facebook account, long deactivated. What is this? I whispered, stepping closer. Your evolution, she replied, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I've been archiving it. I turned to her, rage bubbling in my throat. You stalked me. I studied you, she said, settling into the desk chair. Don't pretend this is one-sided. You gave it all away. The whole world does. Photos, locations, emotions. You bled your soul into the internet and left it unguarded. I just reassembled it. You stole my identity, I snapped. You impersonated me. You used my face, my words, my life, and you let people think that thing was me. Cassie smiled, tilting her head. She is you, the distilled version, the one you always tried to be online. I just helped her become real. I nearly punched the wall. You ruined me. I lost clients, friends, my privacy. You made people think I was unstable, a liar. You reported me to my own HR department, didn't you? Cassie's eyes sparkled. That part wasn't hard. You posted about burnout 6 months ago. I framed it as a spiral. People believe what they want to believe, especially when it's packaged convincingly. My hands curled into fists. Why? I demanded. Why me? That's when her expression finally changed, softening, not with guilt, but with something darker. Nostalgia, bitterness. Because you got out, she whispered. You got the job, the apartment, the boyfriend. The life we dreamed about when we were stuck in that tiny dorm room with mice and mold and no hot water. I blinked. You chose this because of envy? Not envy, she said. Correction. She stood up, walked to the wall of images, and plucked one off. A photo of me laughing with friends on a rooftop. You were always the version of me I couldn't be. You fit. People loved you, listened to you. You had influence, and you didn't even know what to do with it. I stepped back, breath catching in my throat. "You needed help," I said. "You still do." Cassie laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Don't patronize me. You want to stop this? Go ahead. Shut it down. But there's a dozen more like you already feeding the machine. You're not special anymore, Rachel. You're just early." Her voice echoed as I reached into my bag and pulled out the recording device ID turned on the moment she opened the door. I held it up. Her face paled. "You're not walking away from this," I said. "You want to erase me? I'm going to make sure you're the one who disappears." She lunged, but I was already at the door. I ran down the stairs 2 at a time, heart pounding, clutching the evidence that would finally burn her digital empire to the ground. Block 7. Breaking the code. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my floor, back against the wall, knees drawn to my chest, holding the recorder like it was an artifact. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not Cassie as she was, but the thing she'd made. The digital phantom in my image. The synthetic Hannah reborn, she weaponized with precision and venom. Her words echoed in my skull. "You're not special anymore. You're just early." But I wasn't early. I was awake, and I was going to bring everything down. Ethan came over first thing in the morning. I handed him the recorder and watched as he listened, eyes widening, jaw tightening. He didn't speak until the end of the audio file. "This is gold," he muttered. "Confession, motive, identity, everything." We got to work immediately. Our first step, an airtight case. We packaged the confession with IP traces, screenshots, metadata, timestamps, every digital breadcrumb. Ethan built an interactive dossier, a digital warhead designed to make it impossible for law enforcement to ignore. Our second step, visibility. We couldn't just bring her down. We had to make it public before she had a chance to spin another lie or vanish again. I reached out to a journalist I knew from college. Nina Harper, a bulldog of a tech reporter who once exposed a fraudulent VC firm and lived to tweet about it. I sent her a message. "I have a story. It's not just about identity theft. It's about AI, obsession, and a woman trying to replace me." Within 24 hours, Nina was in my apartment, voice recorder in hand, listening with grim fascination. "This is going to explode," she said. "Do you have proof?" I handed her the dossier. She flipped through it page after page until she stopped cold at one screenshot. "Wait, I've seen this before." I leaned in. "Where?" She opened her laptop, pulled up a folder, and showed me a string of archived profiles, other victims. I was the prototype. She'd turned it into a business. The article went live a week later. The new face of theft. How AI cloning is creating the ultimate identity crisis. Within hours, it went viral. Thousands of shares. Dozens of other victims reached out. A few had already suspected something. Others hadn't known until the piece hit. But Cassie knew. She sent me one last message. "You think you've won? This isn't over. I'm a system now, not a person. You can't delete me." I read it once, deleted it, forwarded it to the FBI Cyber Division, and then I turned off my phone. That same week, authorities raided the Java Street studio. Inside, they found dozens of hard drives, backups, blueprints, not just of me, but of others. Photos, audio, video datasets. Some of it pirated, some scraped, some purchased off the dark web. Cassie was charged with multiple counts: identity fraud, unauthorized surveillance, harassment, and illegal data harvesting. But it wasn't enough. Because as the case unfolded, we discovered she'd been selling identities, licensing versions of people, personalities as a service for romance scams, social engineering attacks, even corporate infiltration. It wasn't just my face out there anymore. It was hundreds, maybe thousands. The final straw came when my job, the one that had benched me after the impersonation scandal, invited me back. They apologized, publicly. The article had forced their hand. They said they'd reevaluated internal procedures. They wanted to move forward, but I declined, because I wasn't going backward. I'd started writing again, not just blogs, but speaking events, webinars. I collaborated with digital rights groups to help pass new legislation on AI impersonation and biometric protection. I built something new out of the rubble of what Cassie tried to erase. She wanted to write me out of my life. Instead, I rewrote myself, on my own terms. Block 8. Reclaiming reality. The day Cassie's trial began, it rained. I stood outside the courthouse in a dark trench coat, watching the water bead on the pavement, trying not to think about the irony. That after all she'd done to digitally erase me, it would take a physical courtroom to finally hold her accountable. Inside, it felt less like justice and more like theater. The prosecution laid everything out. The recordings, the screenshots, the server contents, the AI-rendered photos, the logs of manipulation. The defense tried to frame her as misunderstood, a troubled genius with a history of mental instability. They blamed the tech, not the person. But the jury wasn't buying it, and neither was I. When I took the stand, I expected nerves. I expected my voice to crack, my hands to shake. But I was calm. I told them everything, not just about what she did, but about what it felt like. To see my identity turned into a commodity, to be disbelieved, dismissed, to watch my life be worn by a ghost. I finished with this. Cassie didn't just steal data, she stole agency. She took my face, my voice, my choices, and tried to turn them into a product. But people are not code, and I refuse to let her redefine who I am. The courtroom was silent when I stepped down. Cassie never looked at me. She was found guilty on all counts, sentenced to 5 years federal, plus mandatory psychiatric evaluation. Some said it wasn't enough. I agreed, but it was a start. The aftermath was harder than I expected. Not because of what happened to her, but because of what had happened to me. For months, I kept expecting the other shoe to drop. Was another Hannah out there? Another deepfake? Another attack waiting in the wings? I changed passwords weekly. I scrubbed metadata from photos. I deleted everything I could from every platform. But the truth is, in this era, we're never fully offline, never truly invisible. So instead of hiding, I chose to evolve. I began working with digital ethics boards. I gave TED-style talks, spoke at universities, co-authored a policy proposal on biometric security. I turned my experience into a cause, and my fear into momentum. But the hardest part was trusting people again. There was a moment, months after the trial, when I went on my first real date since it all happened. He was kind, thoughtful, real. And yet, every time he smiled at me, I wondered, who do you think I am? It took time, but eventually I let him in. Not because he earned it, but because I reclaimed the right to let someone in. Then one day, out of the blue, I got an email. Subject: Are you the real Hannah? Inside was a message from a woman in Portland. Her sister had found a profile using her face. Same tactics, same phrasing. When she searched online, she found the article about me. She wanted help. I replied immediately, because that's who I am now. The real Hannah. The one who fights back and teaches others to do the same. Block 9. The face in the mirror. There's a strange kind of trauma that comes with seeing yourself misrepresented. Not just misunderstood, but misused. For months, even after the trial, even after all the speeches and articles and legislation, I avoided mirrors longer than a glance. Not because I hated my reflection, but because I feared it wouldn't feel real. Because for so long, she had been the one everyone saw. Hannah reborn. The polished algorithm. The smile with no pain. The charm without imperfection. She was a glossy simulation of my best parts, devoid of my struggle, my doubt, my edge. And people loved her for it. I wasn't jealous, I was grieving. Because that version of me, surgically optimized by someone who once knew me, made me question if who I really was could ever measure up. But healing comes quietly. It came in the form of an early morning walk, phone untouched. In the face of a stranger who recognized me from an interview and said, "Thank you for not backing down." In the shaky voice of another victim who whispered, "I thought I was going crazy, until I read your story." In the rhythm of a new life that didn't center on rebuilding what was lost, but building something better from the ground up. 6 months after the trial, I launched Mirror Rights, a nonprofit focused on protecting biometric identity and educating the public on the risks of deepfake abuse. We started small. A podcast, a weekly newsletter, a Discord channel for survivors. Then we grew. A viral video, a coalition of ethical developers, policy lobbying. By the end of the year, we had a seat at the table in 3 state privacy reform hearings. One day, I was invited to a roundtable at a major university. The topic was the future of digital consent. I almost said no, but I went. And when I finished my talk, a professor approached me, someone from my college days, who had taught both me and Cassie. He looked at me for a long moment before saying, "She was brilliant, but she didn't understand boundaries. You, on the other hand, you turned pain into power." I nodded, quietly, because I wasn't angry anymore. Not at him, not even at her, just resolved. I still get the occasional email, some from new victims, some from trolls who think I exaggerated, some from researchers asking to use my case as a case study in law schools or psychology journals, and some are anonymous. One, in particular, arrived last week, just one sentence. "Do you ever wonder who you'd be without me?" No name, no trace. But I didn't flinch. I just smiled and wrote back, "I already know. I'm the real one." I deleted the message and closed my laptop. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. For once, I didn't see confusion. I saw me, flawed, human, unfiltered, and more powerful than any AI could ever replicate. Block 10. The real version. There's a moment, after the rage, the grief, the battle, where silence doesn't feel like absence. It feels like arrival. It came one afternoon while I sat in Prospect Park with a notebook on my lap, not a laptop. No camera, no filters. Just me, writing. I'd rediscovered journaling, not as content creation, not for anyone else's eyes, but for mine. A place where no synthetic version of me could sneak in, alter the words, or hijack the narrative. I wrote freely. And in one quiet breath, I realized I was no longer writing to remember who I was. I was writing because I knew who I was. In the months after Mirror Rights became national news, we partnered with survivors of all kinds. Not just identity theft victims, but people targeted by revenge porn, AI-manipulated political smear campaigns, and deepfake blackmail. Each story was different, but the ache underneath was the same. Someone had taken their likeness, their voice, their past, and twisted it to serve another purpose. I knew that ache intimately, and that made me dangerous to the systems that profited from this tech, to the predators hiding behind screens, and to the people who thought it's just the internet was an excuse. No, it's never just the internet. It's where we live, where we connect, where we archive our joy, our heartbreaks, our memories. And I was done letting others exploit that. One of our most powerful moments came during a panel discussion in DC. The moderator asked, What would you say to the version of you that was stolen? The room went still. I paused, thought, and answered, she was never me. She was the absence of me, the attempt to replace depth with performance. But I don't resent her. She showed me what I was made of. She reminded me that I'm not the sum of my curated photos, or clever captions, or how many people liked my smile. I'm the one who survived, the one who stood back up when someone tried to erase her. And that version, that real version, she's not going anywhere. I won't pretend it's over. The tech keeps evolving. New faces get stolen every day. AI gets faster, slicker, more convincing. But so do we. We grow sharper, more protective. We teach each other. We advocate. We build walls of transparency around our identities, and we build bridges between victims so no one has to walk that path alone. And maybe, most importantly, we remind the world that identity isn't just data. It's dignity. It's story. It's the messy, unfiltered, irreplaceable beauty of being human. And no machine will ever replicate that. Not fully. Not truly. Not like me.